On today's podcast, we sit down with Lisa Worden, Vice President of Rock and Alternative at iHeartMedia and Program Director at Alt98.7 Radio. We discuss how radio connects with its audience across various platforms, how to get a sense of what listeners want to hear, and the challenges that radio faces in ensuring that listeners remain engaged in the platform. This is one episode you don't want to miss. Insiders, are you ready?
Welcome to MUBUTV's Music Business Insider Podcast, where our mission is to educate, empower, and engage artists and music business professionals who are dedicated to having a successful career in the new music industry. Here are your hosts, Rich Ezra and Eric Knight. Welcome back, Insiders, to another episode of the MUBUTV Music Business Insider Podcast, where our mission is to educate, empower, and engage your music career. On today's podcast, we welcome Lisa Worden, Vice President of Rock and Alternative at iHeartMedia and Program Director at Alt98.7 Radio. We discuss how radio connects with its audiences across various platforms, how she gets a sense of what listeners want to hear, and the challenges radio faces in ensuring listeners remain engaged today. You don't want to miss it. But first, a word from our sponsor. Hey, Insiders, are you looking to take your music career to the next level? Then you need to know about the Music Business Registry. The Music Business Registry is the leading music industry publisher of the most up-to-date contact information for major and independent record label A&R, music publishers, artist managers, music attorneys, music supervisors, and much, much more. The Music Business Registry is the trusted industry standard and source, serving the music business community for over 28 years with the most accurate and up-to-date contact information available. Their titles include the A&R Registry, the Film and Television Music Monthly, the Music Publisher Registry, and the Music Attorney Registry. All of their publications are available in print, PDF, CSV, or online subscription. Visit them now at musicregistry.com and receive a 10% discount by using coupon code MUBUTV10 at checkout. That's musicregistry.com, coupon code MUBUTV10. When you're ready to put your music to work, musicregistry.com.
Welcome back, Insiders. Today's featured guest is Lisa Worden. Lisa is the Vice President of Rock and Alternative Radio Programming at iHeartMedia. She's also the Program Director at 98.7 here in Los Angeles. And we had a great conversation with her. I thought, as the head of radio programming, what makes her job so interesting, I thought, is the fact that she is in a field of, broadcast radio, which is going through a transformation. It's going through a lot of challenges, especially in the last, I'd say, 10 years in terms of just culture. It represented something very, very distinct, for 60, 70, 80 years. Right. And now that's transforming into something even more.
Yeah, it's almost like what was happening when Napster had kind of taken over things with the downloading and the illegal downloading. There was a big shift into how people were consuming, and now it's happening in radio, and we're going through that same experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought, some of the points that she made were what makes broadcast radio unique and compelling. That was a very interesting point, and she made a lot of very interesting comments about the distinctions that make broadcast radio unique and compelling.
I agree, and one of the other things that I thought was really poignant in our conversation with her was the distinctions in programming, which a lot of people don't get. A lot of people think that these programmers are just programming what the latest top 20 songs are, and they're just programming that across the country, and you couldn't have anything further from the truth. You've got a radio station like Power 106 or Z100 in New York that's being programmed completely different to that particular audience segment because they know that market. And I thought that was something that was really, really important.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a great point, Eric, because so much of radio a lot of times can tend to be generic. And we learned from this conversation with her that radio and markets are not generic.
And with that, Insiders, sit back, relax, and enjoy our featured conversation with Lisa Worden.
Lisa, welcome.
Thanks, Rich.
It's so great to meet you. I really appreciate you doing the show. Thank you for doing this.
I appreciate you having me.
Thank you. I always like to begin these conversations with the question that I ask everybody, which is, when in your life did you know that the music business was going to be your professional career path?
I knew before I went to college that I was going to work in music. And music has been the love of my life ever since I was very young. And I remember when basically it was not even a question that I was going to go to college. And I told my parents because they said, you're going to major in business. And I'm like, why? That's not what I'm into. And they said, well, that's how you're going to be able to get a great job and make money when you graduate. And I said, all right, well, that's fine, but I'm going to major in business, minor in marketing, because at least that's creative, because I want to work in music. So they kind of were like, oh, yeah, okay. And while I was attending Long Beach State, I got an internship at a record label who was pretty small at the time. They were called SBK Records. And I commuted from Long Beach to Los Angeles and worked for free to get credits for college. And that's how I got my foot in the door.
Wow. This is Eric. Thank you so much, Lisa. It's a real honor. Been a fan of your broadcasting for many years. What makes broadcast radio unique, compelling, and different from streaming or other audio platforms?
Radio broadcasting, we are a companion. And streaming services, they can't provide that companionship that we can, knowing that when you're listening to the radio, you're sharing that experience with hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of people at the same time. When you listen to Spotify, you're at home and that's your library. That's maybe for some people music discovery even. But when you're listening to the radio, that's a shared communal experience that no one can replicate. Also, it's a curated musical experience. So we are delivering to the listeners what we think they're going to like the most. So they don't have to sift through tons of playlists on Spotify or Amazon or Apple or wherever to find what they like. We're going to do that job for them and spoon feed them the best new music discovery.
It's interesting hearing you speak about that because it goes right to the heart of my next question, which is a deep dive into your profession. And, how is the broadcast radio industry ensuring that younger listeners remain engaged in an era where the media consumption habits of Generation Z and millennials are not just audio content, but a far broader landscape that populates the culture today with DSPs, social media, live streaming events, video content, and other platforms? Can you talk about that? Because you have really devoted your career to broadcast radio, and I know these are challenges that you face. So can you talk about that?
Absolutely. I feel really fortunate to be at a company that is so forward thinking and innovative. And iHeartMedia, and this is an edict that comes from Bob Pittman on down. We're committed to having younger listeners. We are not ready to just let them go to the DSPs and let them go on their way. We are not at all. We are committed to trying to keep younger listeners. And how do we do that? Well, it's all the things you just described. Promoting that you can listen for free on the iHeartRadio app. And we have brands that people care about. We have personalities that people care about. Charlemagne, who's based at Power in New York. Elvis Duran, who is based out of Z100. My morning show, Woody. We have him syndicated on several stations in our company because we're committed to our personalities, and those help make our brands. We have some of the biggest radio brands in audio. So it's not just in radio per se, but iconic brands like Kiss FM in Los Angeles, KFI, again, Z100 in New York. The list can go on, but we are committed to having the best personalities and talent, keeping our brands strong. Also events. The company is very committed to doing national events. So something I'm personally involved with is our Alter Ego show that's every January out of Los Angeles. It's our national alternative and rock tentpole that's promoted across all the properties. We have the iHeartRadio Music Awards coming up actually this Monday. The iHeartRadio Festival that occurs every September in Las Vegas. We have Fiesta Latina. We have iHeart Country. So we're very committed to touching all of the points that to us, a listener would care about. The live space, the listening, the curated listening experience, the personalities, podcasting. huge, huge initiative for iHeart and a very successful one. So it's through all these things that we feel we are very competitive, and we are, not just that we feel we are very competitive in the audio and media space.
Lisa, I wanted to ask you, can you speak about some of the distinctions in programming, the different genres of music, and do those differences vary with each market?
Absolutely. That's something I preach pretty much on the daily, on the weekly, is how important it is to program to your market. Because I can speak about alternative and rock. Those are the two formats that I oversee for iHeart. Not one station is completely like the other. So Alt98.7 in Los Angeles, completely its own brand and entity. There is not one other alternative station in our company that's like it. The Buzz in Houston, WRFF in Philly, DC 101 in Washington, DC. They all have their own stationalities. They all have their own personalities, their own curated playlists. They're all different. And it's extremely important because every brand is different. Alt98.7 in Los Angeles is new. It's a brand new radio station. DC 101 in Washington, DC is a heritage, iconic brand in that market that's been around for, I think, 30 years. So there's no way you can program the same way to an audience like that versus an audience here where, like we know, I programmed across the street for many, many, many years. K-Rock is very different from Alt98.7. And then you go, well, an Alt98.7 is completely different from all these alternative stations. So yes, we program each station individually.
When you're programming for a specific market today, like what you were just saying, what tools do you rely on or use to get a sense of what your listeners want to hear?
So it's the art and science method of programming. You have the art side that is gut and instinct and listening to the music and really trying to make the best decisions possible that you think the audience is going to love, picking the best songs, knowing how long to play them before you put them into research, looking at a streaming story and deciding, hey, does this huge streaming song actually fit and work for our audience and our radio station? There might be a song, and I just said it on the panel I was just on, that honestly, I don't even know what the streams are, and I added it because I love it so much. And I think the audience is going to love it as well. And then there is the math/science side of the job where we do have research to help us make some decisions. And it's a guide and it's a tool. It is not a dictate. So I'm fortunate enough to have research for several of our top markets. And I can look at that for Los Angeles, and I can look at it for my currents that I'm playing on Alt98.7, and I can get a gauge for how familiar a song is, how well liked is it, do they know it yet, do they not like it, and really have that as a tool to help me make rotation decisions. And then there's other research we have as well, but the job is half art and half science.
Hey, Insiders, we hope that you've been enjoying our featured interview. Stay tuned because we've got so much more value coming your way. But before we dive back in, a word from our sponsor. So, hey, Rich, tell me a little bit about the Music Business Registry.
Well, what we are, Music Business Registry is the leading contact directory. We publish all of the most current, accurate, and up-to-date contact information for the music industry. We do directories for A&R. We do directories for music publishers. We do directories for film and television music. We do directories of artist managers, and we do directories of music attorneys. And we also sell other publications too, like the Indie Bible series, the YouTube Bible series, the Indie Spotify Bible series, and other things as well. That's what we're about.
So if I wanted to find out, let's say, the music supervisor for American Horror Story, I can kind of go into the Film and TV monthly and find the information that I need there?
Well, we don't list specific shows. If you know who the music supervisor is, and you can find that out on IMDb, then you can find their contact information. And we have that in our Film and Television Music Monthly. Absolutely, yes.
That's great. And I hear that we have a discount right now. If you go to musicregistry.com and use coupon code MUBUTV10 at checkout, you'll receive 10% off your first order.
That's absolutely correct. Yeah, we offer that to all of the MUBUTV insiders.
So insiders, check out musicregistry.com and use MUBUTV10 as your coupon code. What do you feel are the greatest challenges that you feel broadcast radio faces today?
Well, Nothing is ever without challenges. I think today, one of the biggest challenges is simply making sure that we are cutting through the noise of all the other options there are to consume music, listen to music, and make sure we're doing our job to stay relevant with where the audience is going. So we spend an enormous amount of time trying to educate our listeners about all of the benefits they can get by listening to us on the iHeartRadio app. And my job is to make sure it cuts through on the air and doesn't sound like a commercial or just doesn't go in one ear and out the other. So my listeners hear, oh, listen to us on the iHeartRadio app. All right, whatever. No, it's my job to be able to educate them of why they should do that in a way that is compelling for them so that they actually do, because that's where things are going. That's where you can get our brands, our radio stations, our podcasts. It's where everything is going. So, a lot of people consume radio in their car. We want to make sure we're evolving to where it isn't just a car experience. So to me, that's something that keeps me up at night, that I'm, constantly trying to figure out ways, and it's working.
Yeah, it's working because, it's interesting you say that that's what keeping you up at nights, because that's the world that's evolving today. That challenge of how do we continually keep people engaged? How do we even get their attention to keep them engaged? This is what so many of the panels here have been talking about, is that very essence.
Yeah.
I want to ask you a personal question creatively, which is, throughout your life, have there been any movies or books that have really inspired you, professionally speaking, that you can speak of or recommend to our audience?
That's a really good question. I admit, because my husband and I, we have 7.5-year-old twins. So probably for the last 8.5 years, I haven't read many books because I'm balancing a career with being a mom. But life has certainly gotten really interesting compared to pre-kids. I would say, I got to think about that question. I have been moved by certain movies and by certain books. I don't have that ready off the top of my head.
No problem. What are the most important pieces of advice that you can offer someone who is looking to break into radio as a career, such as yourself? Is there a specific path or things that one should do?
So, ma'am, we constantly need more talent. So whether it's personalities that are on the air or people that want to program, just people in general who have passion for radio, we always need that. I would say you got to be persistent. You can't think people are just going to find you. And that's one of my fears, is the younger generation right now. I see that a lot, where they think it's going to come to them. And it should come to them, and that's how it should be. And it just doesn't work that way. You got to work for it. Coming to a convention like this is smart. You're in front of all these people that are right in the center of the music business. It's a way to meet people. After this panel, I must have met 20 new people I'd never met before. And God bless, they came right up and introduced themselves. So that's my first suggestion, and it's something I feel strongly about, is you've got to be committed and you got to go get it. If somebody wanted to work in radio, like let's say with me at my radio station or in the alternative space, email me, seek me out, DM me on Instagram. You find me, and then you get my attention, and you show me why I should be interested in talking to you. And again, it's not about catering to me. You've got to get people's attention, because if you are at home going, I want to work in the radio, and you're not doing anything about it because you think someone's going to find you or whatever, it's not going to happen. Be talented. If you want to be a radio personality, know your craft. Have a personality. Stand out amongst the rest. Why are you different? Why? What's going to make you great? And be ready with that talent to show it to people. Because again, if you want to be on the radio and you got my attention, all right, show me why you're great. So, it's about knowing people, being a go-getter, loving. If music is what you love, great. Go get it. What area of the business? Do you want to be at a record label? Do you want to sign bands? Do you want to work with artists? Do you want to manage artists? Have your goal, specify what it is, and then find that line to go get it.
Great answer. And I want to ask you that same question. In sort of reverse on specifically, what advice would you have for people that want to pursue a career as a professional recording artist?
Oh gosh, absolutely. The competition is fierce. You are amongst hundreds of thousands, probably millions of people that want to be a successful recording artist. And not everybody is going to be Beyonce. And we know that. And that's what makes Lady Gaga and Beyonce and Taylor Swift so special, is because they really are amongst the elite. Find the right people to surround you. Find the right manager, someone who gets you and gets your vision. Do not just sign with somebody because they say they can make you a lot of money, they can get you signed, they can get you on the radio. No, you want to be surrounded by the right people that get you and believe in you and see the vision for you the same way you do, and then can get you in front of the right people. But first comes people that get you. Then comes the business part. To me, that's how I would see it. And then your music's got to be freaking great. It's got to be great. If you really want to be successful, you have to be able to play live in front of an audience. You could be a singer-songwriter or a band. You got to be good. You got to be able to engage an audience and then make great music. So when you have the winning, ingredients, all these things we just talked about, you stand a good chance of having a successful career.
You touched on it earlier, Lisa, about getting a hold of you, DMing you, emailing you. Where can people best connect with you?
Instagram is my main social media platform that I love, and it's LA Worden. So LAWORDEN. Really easy. People DM me music. They reach out. I admit sometimes it takes me a minute to listen to everything because I have a lot of music to listen to, but that's a great way to engage. Emailing, I usually do more on a business, but if it's an artist who wants to listen to their music, Instagram is a great way that I like using.
Lisa, we want to thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Yes. We really, really appreciate it. It's really been a pleasure having you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Wow, what an interesting conversation. This is the second time that we have had a conversation around the whole area of radio. I mean, I remember with Nick Harcourt. And what makes this particular conversation so distinct and unique to me is several of the points that she made. Number one, what makes broadcast unique and compelling? And Lisa talked about a lot of very, very interesting factors to it. She talked about the brands. She talked about the people that you care about. She talked about the locality, meaning the localness of the particular format, as opposed to just streaming where you're just listening to a song. There's not that relationship.
Right. I think she talked about it being a communal experience. That was one of the points that I was, going to say, that the whole idea of sharing in the experience when you're having a radio broadcast, that could be being listened to by maybe tens of hundreds of thousands of people at the same time, as opposed to you being at home listening to Spotify, which is just a one-on-one experience.
Exactly.
And I thought that was really distinct. And it's true. I mean, I'm a big fan of radio. I still listen to radio quite a bit, so I thought that was an interesting point.
Yeah, exactly. And what's interesting about her particular programming is the way she talked about how you program according to the market.
Right. Which we talked about at the top of the show. Yeah.
Which, New York is not LA. LA is not Detroit.
Exactly.
Detroit is not Austin, Texas. Austin is not, Miami, Florida.
Right.
So you have to program according to your audiences, and it's not generic. Music isn't generic, and either are audiences. And she got into that in terms of how you program different genres of music for different markets.
Yeah, one of the other areas that I thought was really important, which we've asked before people like Nick and also other people like Rick Cummings on the video show that we've had, is the idea of how they're keeping young listeners to get into the medium, because of course things are changing at such a rapid pace. And she talked about promoting their huge events like Alter Ego or the iHeartRadio Awards, which have become very popular. And I just thought that was really interesting, that those are the tactics that they're doing to get those younger listeners, Generation Z and beyond, engaged in their programming.
I couldn't agree more. And I think, to me, that is really the greatest challenge that radio faces today, is how you get, with all of their platforms, with all of the outlets, both with DSPs, broadcast, etc., the podcasting element, how do you continue to get the future generations engaged in what you're doing?
Hey, Insiders, thanks so much for tuning into this episode. We really appreciate it. To get show notes, links, and everything that was mentioned during this interview, head on over to our official website at MUBUTV.com/podcast/show notes. If you're enjoying the content and what we're doing here on the show, please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts from. And don't forget to rate and review our show at iTunes. 5-star reviews are always welcome and help to ensure that our podcast stands out on the top-rated and new and noteworthy charts on iTunes and our space. You can also find us at social media at Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter X, all ending with the handle MUBUTV, which is spelled MUBUTV. Don't forget to catch our flagship show, the MUBUTV Music Business Insider video series, airing every week on YouTube at youtube.com/MUBUTV. This show was produced and created by Rich Ezra and Eric Knight. Theme music by Disciples of Babylon, and be sure to tune in next week for another episode of the MUBUTV Music Business Insider Podcast.